Hello, my name is Sleepy Salad, and today I'm going to be showing you the How to Play Fossil Fighters the Card Game Beginner's Guide, Part 2, Vivosaur Cards and Action Cards. First off, welcome to Fossil Fighters the Card Game. My name is Sleepy Salada, and I would like to welcome you to a passion project I've been working on for the past, now, 2 years, which is Fossil Fighters the Card Game. In this video, I'm going to be teaching you how to read and understand Vivosaur and action cards for the game. But before you watch this video, I urge you to please watch the first How to Play Fossil Fighters Card Game Beginner's Guide. I'll be referring to a lot of the material from that video to explain what is going on in this video. That video will also explain the basic mechanics of the game as turn structure, how to win the game, and basic rules. This video will go way more in depth into that material taught in that video, so please watch that video before watching this one. First off, let's begin. What is a Vivosaur or action card? Vivosaur the card game has two different types of cards, Vivosaur cards and action cards. There are also other cards that we will be going over later, but these two are the most important. Vivosaur cards are your most important card between the two that are in your deck. They are the ones that use skills to KO your opponent's Vivosaurs and determine if you win the game or not. Action cards are a helpful bunch that help support your strategy by making your deck more consistent or giving support to your Vivosaurs. Speaking of Vivosaurs, let's look at them. So we are going to be going over the layout of every card, so I'm going to be explaining everything highlighted. First off, the Vivosaur name. This is the name of the card. When you would play a card that would take a card from your deck or discard pile with a specific name, you look at this part of the card, such as Spinax. You can only have 3 of each card in your deck that share the same name in this name box. Some cards can also treat themselves as different names so they can work with other cards. Cards with variations in the names, regardless of how similar they are treated as different cards. So for example, if you have Spinax 1 and Spinax 2, though as similar as they are, those are 2 different cards. Next up, LP. This is the life points of your Vivosaur. If the Vivosaur takes damage from effects or attack skills, subtract it from this number and keep it at that number to show how much LP that Vivosaur has remaining. If you would heal LP from a Vivosaur, you have to reduce the damage that was dealt to this Vivosaur previously, but the Vivosaur's LP can never go higher than its printed LP on the card. If a Vivosaur's LP becomes 0, it is defeated, and your opponent gains 1 KO point. Now then, let's go over elements. All Vivosaurs have a symbol called an element. There are 5 elements that a Vivosaur can have: fire, earth, wind, water, neutral. Elements determine the damage it does with an attack skill, known as elemental advantage or elemental disadvantage. Vivosaurs with elemental advantage will deal 2 times base damage with an attack skill, but Vivosaurs with elemental disadvantage will deal -30 base damage with an attack skill. The elemental advantage wheel goes as follows: fire is strong against earth is strong against wind, and wind is strong against water, and of course water is strong against fire. Elemental disadvantage is in this order: fire is weak to water, water is weak to wind, wind is weak to earth, and earth is weak to fire. As you notice, I left out neutral because neutral has no elemental weakness or advantage. It takes the base damage and deals the same base damage. Next, let's go over attack range. All Vivosaurs have a range which determines what Vivosaurs it can use attack skills on. Close range, it can only use attack skills on Vivosaurs in the Vivosaur zone in front of it. Mid range, it can use attack skills on Vivosaurs in the Vivosaur zone in front of it and adjacent to it. And finally, long range. It can only use attack skills on Vivosaurs in the leftmost or rightmost zone, but opposite of the Vivosaur zone your Vivosaur is in. Vivosaurs can only use attack skills on Vivosaurs in its range, so Vivosaur would move out of the range of your Vivosaur while it is using an attack skill. That attack skill will fail. If you want to learn more in depth about how ranges work, please refer to the previous video. Next, let's go over FP charge value and effects. Vivosaur cards have a charge value and can have a charge effect. The green diamond in the leftmost box equals the FP value it provides while it is in the FP zone. After a Vivosaur in the FP zone has been used to activate an action card or used for a Vivosaur skill, it will activate the effect in the text box. For example, Spinax here is worth 1 FP, and when it's spent, you have the effect to apply Harden to a Vivosaur you control. We will be going over Harden shortly. The sequence of charge effects occur as follows. When a Vivosaur uses an attack skill using the Spinax in your FP zone, it will deal the damage of the attack skill, and it will perform the effect of the attack skill, if any. Afterwards, you apply the effect, after the effect of the attack skill is finished, you now have the opportunity to use the charge effect of the Vivosaur spent to use the attack skill. So please remember that you can only use charge effects after what you have used to spend them is finished. Next, let's go over abilities. Vivosaur cards have an effect called an ability. The ability of a Vivosaur can have huge variety of what it can do. A Vivosaur's ability will apply its effect when it meets the conditions. For example, Spinax's auto counter will make the Vivosaur that used an attack skill on it lose 80 LP after the damage it is dealt, similar to how it is in the video game. You can also have abilities that activate when you would like to, during your turn when you would like. For example, Lambio's Healing Hand. It lets you either discard one card from your hand or rest the Lambio to heal all your Vivosaurs by 50 LP. So you don't need to reach a specific condition in order to use it, you can just use it whenever you want during your turn. Also, some abilities will apply its effect while the Vivosaur is in the Vivosaur zone. For example, Chelen's Ancient Lock prevents your opponent from swapping Vivosaur zones. You do not need to activate it or have to meet a special condition, this will just always be active while that Chelen is on the field. Next, let's go over card traits. All Vivosaur cards have a term called traits, and some action cards can also have traits. These traits do not directly affect the Vivosaur card itself, but can make it work with other types of cards that give benefits to Vivosaurs with certain traits. For example, the card U-Raptor has an attack skill called Raptor Rage, which can add one Raptor Vivosaur from your deck to your hand. So this allows you to play more Vivosaurs which have the Raptor trait, which can help support your deck. You can also have cards like Rivet Ravine, which gives all Pterosaur Vivosaurs an extra ability called Roost, which allows the Vivosaur to rest itself, heal 100 LP, and charge 2 additional FP, all in one ability. Certain combination of cards can allow an entire deck composed of supporting exclusively one trait, such as Raptors or Ceratops. Next, let's go over skills. I've been mentioning them a bunch. All Vivosaurs have 2 skills, either being attack or support skills. Attack skills, which are the orange name box, are skills that deals damage to an opposing Vivosaur, while support skills, which are a green name box, applies a beneficial effect. To read skills, they have an FP cost on the left side in the dark orange box, a skill name in the middle, and damage on the right in the white box. After a Vivosaur uses a skill, it is turned clockwise and rested. A Vivosaur cannot use skills while rested, and Vivosaurs are unrested during your next charge phase. Vivosaurs can only use attack skills on Vivosaurs within its range, but you can use support skills regardless of your Vivosaur's range, as they are not affecting your opponent's Vivosaurs. Now then, let's go over a new card type, Super Evolve Vivosaurs. This is a group of Vivosaurs called Super Evolver Vivosaurs. These are Vivosaurs that can only be played by certain conditions using a specific Vivosaur in your Vivosaur zone. Super Evolver Vivosaurs cannot be played in your FP zone and will be put into your discard pile immediately if it would enter the FP zone from being KO'd. If a Super Evolver Vivosaur is KO'd, your opponent will get 2 KO points instead of the 1 KO point from regular Vivosaurs. You can only play one Super Evolver Vivosaur in your entire deck. This includes your side deck, so make your choice wisely. All other parts of the Super Evolver Vivosaur cards are the same as other Vivosaur cards. Now then, we are done with Vivosaurs. Let's go over action cards. First off, as similar as the card names for Vivosaurs, same rules apply to action cards. You can only have 3 copies in your entire deck that share the same name as each other, and some may have similar names, but if there's any variation, you can both play them at 3. Next is the FP cost. All action cards have an FP cost that will need to be spent in order to activate the card. When you play the action card, you spend the upfront FP cost of the card and use an action point in order to use the action card. If the activation of your action card is negated from cards like Unexpected Encounter, you will not use an action point, but will still have to spend the FP cost. At the start of your charge phase, you get action points equal to the number of Vivosaurs your opponent has. If you have 0 action points though, you cannot use any action cards. Next, let's go over the effect. All action cards have an effect that can either be beneficial to the player using it, or can be very harmful to your opponent. For example, Smashing Success has the effect to draw 2 cards from your deck for only a cost of 1 FP. But you also have the flip side of BB Bandit's Surprise, which has the effect to rest an opponent's Vivosaur and deal 50 damage to it. Some cards have immediate powerful effects, or conditional effects that can only be used when something happens, like the earlier mentioned Unexpected Encounter, which has the effect to prevent one of the following actions when it occurs by spending 3 FP. You can stop a Vivosaur from using a skill, a player activating an action card, or a player playing a card into their FP zone from their hand. Now then, let's go over action card types. All action cards are grouped into action card types that each have a different rule set to follow. For example, support action are cards that can only play one copy of per turn, but have very strong effects in return. Assist action cards allow you to play any number of copies in a turn, but have a little weaker effects. Arena action cards are able to stay on the field after being played that affect both players, but only one can be on the field at the same time. Attack action cards can be played on any player's turn, even your opponent's turn, so you can use them to disrupt their plays. Team action cards grant Vivosaurs an additional skill under the correct conditions. And tool action cards are a new card type that can equip themselves underneath your Vivosaurs that give them a small beneficial effect while equipped. So let's start going over each individual one. First off, support action cards. These are cards that you can only activate one copy of them in a turn, but come with a very strong effect in return. If your opponent would negate the activation of your support action card, you can use another copy of it as the previous one had its activation prevented. This rule does not apply though if it will be played by another card's effect, like for example Sopdrax's Copycat, which says after an action card is activated, you can target one action card in your discard pile, add it to your hand, then immediately activate it without paying its FP cost. You can only use one Copycat per turn. Next is assist action cards. These are cards that you can play any number of during your action phase. These have simpler, weaker effects compared to support action cards. Having a good quantity of assist cards in your deck allows you to use your action points without them going to waste during your turn, with having smaller benefits, such as letting you draw cards or gaining FP. Your action points from your charge phase carry over to your opponent's turn, but will reset during your next charge phase. So please make sure to use your action points before they are wasted on your next turn. Next up are arena action cards. These are cards that you can play in your arena zone on your field and will stay active after being played. While an arena action card is in the arena zone, it will apply its effect to both players, which can be beneficial to only one player or both players, so please be careful which ones you play. There can only be one arena card between both players' fields, and if a new arena card will be played, you discard the previously active arena card, but you cannot play another copy of the same arena card already in play. Next up is the attack action card. These are cards that can be played on either player's turns with effects that will give a negative effect to your opponent. You can play any number of copies of an attack action card during your opponent's turn, but you can only play one copy of an attack action card during your own turn. Make sure to save up your action points for your opponent's turn when you have an attack action card, so that you can use it. That'll stop your opponent's plays, because if you have no action points during your opponent's turn, you cannot play any action cards during your opponent's turn. Next up is team action cards. These are cards that are action cards that give specific Vivosaurs an attack skill that can be used if there is a specific Vivosaur setup in your Vivosaur zones. When you play the team action card, you pay an FP cost to play the action card itself. Then, if you want to use a skill the card gives your Vivosaur, you have to pay the FP cost of that skill and the rest of the Vivosaur using it, like you're using a normal skill that's already printed on that Vivosaur. If your Vivosaur with this card underneath it uses the attack skill, it will deal damage to all of your opponent's Vivosaurs, regardless of range. Next up is the new tool action card type. These are cards that are equipped to a Vivosaur by placing the card underneath it, and provides the equipped Vivosaur a benefit. A Vivosaur can only have one tool card equipped to it at a time, so make sure to plan which tool card you want on your Vivosaur. When you play the tool action card, you pay the FP cost of the card, but once the tool action card is equipped to your Vivosaur, you do not have to pay its FP cost in order to use its effect, which it gives to your Vivosaurs. Next up, let's go over status conditions. Status conditions are placed on Vivosaurs from either skills from Vivosaurs or from action cards. Each status has a turn timer that says how long that card will be affecting the Vivosaur with the status condition. This timer does go down by 1 during each end phase of the player who controls that Vivosaur with the status condition, except the turn it was applied though. If the turn timer on the status condition reaches 0, it is removed from the Vivosaur and is no longer applied to it. Vivosaurs can have any number of statuses applied to it at the same time, but if the Vivosaur would have a status condition applied to it that it already has, the turn timer will reset instead of applying another copy of that status condition. Alright, let's start going over some status conditions. First off, we're going to go over Inflame and Harden. Inflame increases the base damage of the Vivosaur's attack skills by 50. and Harden decreases the damage taken from opposing attack skills by 50. This only affects the base damage of the attack skills though, meaning it applies the damage change before you would calculate elemental weakness or elemental disadvantage into the damage. Here is a whole damage calculation chart. I will not be going over it. If you want to pause and read it, go ahead. Otherwise, we will be moving forward. Next, we have Quicken and Counter. Quicken given the Quicken gives the Vivosaur the ability to possibly prevent the attack skill that is targeting your Vivosaur by flipping a coin. If that coin does land on heads, that attack skill will continue as normal. If the coin, though, flips on tails, that attack skill will not deal any damage, and any effect that Vivosaur attack skill has will be negated. Now, Counter has a similar effect to Quicken, but instead of preventing the attack skill, it will deal the base damage of that attack skill back to the Vivosaur using that attack skill instead. Counter will treat the Vivosaur using the attack skill as if it was using the attack skill on itself, instead of the Vivosaur that has Counter. So for example, if your Spin Axe attacks a Vivosaur with Counter, and the Counter forces the Vivosaur to attack itself, Auto Counter will trigger, hurting itself. Next, let's go over some negative status conditions. We have Excite and Confuse. Excite prevents the Vivosaur with a status condition unable to swap Vivosaur zones, and if the Vivosaur is KO'd, it will be discarded instead of being placed into the FP zone. If the Vivosaur with Excite cannot be switched by your opponent, the Vivosaur with Excite cannot be switched by your opponent's cards or effects that would force the Vivosaur to swap Vivosaur zones, like Whirlwind. Confuse forces your opponent's Vivosaurs to swap Vivosaur zones at the start of the action phase and will reset and will rest the Vivosaur afterwards. This Vivosaur zone swap does not count towards your once per turn Vivosaur swap. If the Vivosaur is unable to swap Vivosaur zones due to abilities or other status conditions like Excite, it will not be rested afterwards. Next is Poison and Sleep. Poison has no effect that applies to the Vivosaur while the Vivosaur has a status condition. But once the turn count on the status condition reaches 0, it is removed and it will deal damage to the Vivosaur that had the status condition equal to 1/4 of its max LP, rounded up to the nearest 10. If the Vivosaur would take poison damage and the 1/4 of the damage would be, for example, equal to 55, the damage will become 60. If the status is removed by a different card's effect, it will not apply the effect to deal damage. It will only apply if it's removed by its own effect. Sleep will force the Vivosaur to be rested, and it will have the effects of its ability negated. The Vivosaur will continue to be rested until the sleep status condition is removed from the Vivosaur, but the Vivosaur will not be unrested until the next charge phase. A Vivosaur applied with sleep will immediately be rested, and even if the sleep status condition is removed, it will remain rested until that player's next charge phase. Next is Scare and Enrage. Scare, upon being applied to the Vivosaur, will make the controller of that Vivosaur choose one of the Vivosaur skills randomly, and that chosen skill cannot be used while Scare is applied. If Scare is reapplied to the Vivosaur while Scare is still applied to it, it will reset the turn counter, but not what skill is unable to be used. Enrage, though, will make the controller of the Vivosaur with the status condition applied have to flip a coin when using an attack skill. If it is heads, that attack skill will deal double base damage, but in return, if it is tails, that attack skill will deal no damage, have its effects negated, and the controller of that Vivosaur will have to discard one card from their hand. If the controller of the Vivosaur with Enrage applied uses an attack skill, they can still use an attack skill even if they have no cards in hand. But if it lands on tails, the attack skill will still deal no damage, have no effect, but the player will not have to discard a card from their hand because they have no cards in their hand. Now then, let's go over some common terms used in the card game so you are caught up to speed. Rested refers to a Vivosaur that is turned clockwise after using a skill. Rested Vivosaurs cannot use skills. Trait. Trait refers to a card group that is associated with other cards due to similarities that can work with other cards. Face down cards. Face down cards cannot be seen by your opponent, but you can look at them at any time. These are mostly commonly used by Dinarian cards. Charge. When a card is placed into the FP zone, but if it says charge +1 FP, it refers to placing FP cards from your FP deck into your FP zone. Charged. When a card is placed into the FP zone, charged refers to when a card in your FP zone is used to pay the cost of a card. Action points. Points that you use to activate your action cards. You get the action points at the start of your charge phase equal to the number of Vivosaurs your opponent controls. Defeated or KO'd. When a Vivosaur's LP becomes 0, it is defeated and the opponent of that Vivosaur gains 1 KO point. Counter. Not the status condition. Counters are placed on a card to represent a game state. For example, T-Rex with King counters and Futabi with Arashi counters. Play or played. This refers to when a Vivosaur is placed into the Vivosaur zone as a Vivosaur, unless stated otherwise. Once per turn or once per game. This refers to an effect of a card that can only be used once per turn or once per game, between all copies of that card, even if you have multiple copies in play. Defending Vivosaur. This refers to a Vivosaur that is the target of the Vivosaur using the attack skill. And team. The Vivosaurs you need to control to use the skill of a team action card skill. Now, you may be asking, after learning all this information, where do you go to play? So, you can check the description of the video for the Discord channel link to join the server to learn more of the game, such as the cards created to play and decks to play with. You can also play the game on many different simulators, such as TCG Arena, Untap, Lackey CCG, Tabletop Simulator, and many more. I like to appreciate you guys all for watching, and I hope you learned more about the card game. I can't wait to see you guys in the server, and if you liked the video, please like and subscribe, as I do plan on bringing more videos about how to play the game and what decks you can try out in the new card pools. I appreciate you guys watching this far, and I hope you guys have an amazing day.